the question of follow-up. And I know at some point you mentioned resources, and maybe, Koki, just to fully understand that sometimes we have the ideas, we have the notion, would like to follow up, but resources sometimes in the media room or in the newsroom are scarce to a point where if a story like this, if we take the Likoni ferry, for example, there are definitely questions that need to be asked and followed up. But should there be another story that comes up, resources are diverted to the other story because we still have a responsibility to follow that up.
What are these resources that are diverted?
Resources here is it can be human capital, the people that are required. In a newsroom, you're an editor, Clay. How many people do you have in your hands that can follow up on this story for the next 6 months to ensure that we have those questions answered?
Mombasa office is very able. You just talk to one of them there now.
I just think there is competition also for things happening that need to be reported. And therefore, like I said, unless you have a really specialized desk, for specific, issues that would be of interest, which, trend and change over the times, then you would have that challenge of allocation. That's what I tend to think, that you'd have a lot of challenge if you have the same reporters having to do all the types of reporting and not specialized in one way. What I've seen in the practice of Kenya mainly is investigative journalism. You have dedicated journalists who then, pursue stories for that.
Stories like that.
But I think the rest of the other journalists are busy with their area. I mean,
although we also have, people who specialize, say, in politics.
Yeah.
There are those who have a political desk. At KTN News, we also have what I'd call like a health desk. We have a reporter who specifically is a doctor and follows up on that, Dr. Mercy Korir. And would that be the way to go, Clay, in terms of having specialized desks and specialized reporters who keep their eyes and hands on specific stories?
I think also, because you don't expect a media house to have divers or something like that, or safety experts or people, mechanical engineers, or to tell us about the ferry. But actually, what is usually done is that you outsource. You get people who are experts in that area and work with them. And even if it comes to probably interviewing the Kenya Ferry Services manager or the technical guys there, you talk to people who actually have more knowledge on how that thing is run before you conduct the interview. And that's what media houses do. There's no media house that actually has employed all this. The whole of CNN, which is much bigger than all the media houses in this country, has only one doctor on its staff, Sanjay Gupta. And has only one doctor. And some of the people that they have, like the Met guys that they have, are actually not CNN employees. They get them from
what is your take on specialized desks? Specialized desk here does not mean we have a mechanic, we have somebody who runs a ferry. But if it's the investigative desk, they will engage a mechanic.
But I guess I understand what Clay is saying.
Because every time these people say, like, oh, local media houses don't have resources. And you see, that thing is actually coming to us that sometimes we also use that excuse. I don't consider it an explanation, I consider it an excuse that we don't have resources. So
are you saying that we have enough resources to cover
I think we can, because what you need here actually are more of not physical, but how you employ the mental resources. Like, okay, fine, here, I need to get this thing, the story about the ferry out. How do I? Let me talk to these other sources, people who are more aware or who are more knowledgeable about this.
Okay,
then let me get my story.
No, I have experienced once or twice Al Jazeera coming in to interview me, and they've actually outsourced. They actually have local small entities that are working in the media space that come record.
Freelancers, maybe?
Yes, and you'll have the editor not even on the ground. The editor is calling you from out there, sending you the questions, and then they come in, take the footage, and then, they use the footage for, their editing right back home. So he's right.
Yeah.
The way to expand content creation, if the media cannot afford to, those specific persons, it's like he says, we need to have, more collaborations towards how do we get more content creators coming in? Just the way you can get tokens like us, you also need to have an arrangement where you get youthful people who have the equipment, who have standards, who know your standards of, publication, who agree with the editors what needs to be done, and then the follow-up stories can more or less
They
be
can
done.
more or less.
Yeah.
All right. What about the question of our business models, and maybe Clay, and to engage you on this in terms of how we get our resources? Because at the end of the day, as much as we have to churn out the news, it needs to be profitable. Otherwise, we cannot run. It's a very expensive industry to be in.
Yeah, because it has to be profitable. This is basically, it's a business.
It's a business.
And you see, one thing people forget is that we operate in an economy. If the economy is bad, all the businesses are hit.
If anything, we are hit more.
Yeah, but you see, that's one thing people don't seem not to understand, because when they say like you should be like CNN, compare where the CNN headquarters, where they operate from, their economy and our economy. You see, because when CNN sent somebody to Nairobi, like that time when Richard Quest came here, and you see all interviews were like from here to that one. They send like an advanced team. They have an assignment editor. They have those people who, they have fixers. They have, everything is arranged. By the time, and I can tell you that the staff that the Richard Quest show, whatever it's called, the staff that it has is probably more than the staff that is working who at the whole of KTN. Yes, just that one show.
And that's the resources we're talking about.
Because they can
that's
afford. Yeah, but you see, when people accuse us, it's not that we actually have these resources and we're hiding them. No, it's because the economy, we actually have to consider that actually the economy that we are working in. Yeah, so we cannot operate like those people. We cannot have as many resources as even our government, even our health sector itself cannot have as many resources as, because
Koki, your thoughts on the business model.
We have to look at the environment that we operate in. So before we throw stones at the media, and that's why I keep on saying, like, they keep on, and I'm using this term for the first time on national TV or anywhere else, they call us Githeri media. I think actually, and I find it oxymoronic, because for people who eat Githeri, Githeri is supposed to be like a delicacy. So either if they call us Githeri media, they're actually praising us,
media.
or if they think that
a new way of looking at it.
they think that actually because we're not good enough, I think we have Githeri audience. Yeah.
Today,
Throwing it back to them.
Clay is
Clay
on the case of the audience. I think if you, in terms of studies, there is, I think, a newspaper called Garnet. I can't remember the name exactly, but it has outlined more or less the new trend in business operations within media houses. And it advocates for having more editors in place and more of people on the ground who are outsourcing, actually, the way you're saying, that you have even an editor to work with communities so that you can get the stories they want to tell. You have others who just, have a team of more or less freelance journalists or reporters who go and source for information, and then they make a decision around what we are saying. So the other way of looking at it is maybe expanding the editorial kind of managerial role, and then giving them more of what is clearly defined areas of dealing with an issue, and then, of course, providing them with a team of correspondents or reporters who will basically, give in the content. And then you will see that with the increase of content, then the mode of collection of money might have to change to subscription, because not everybody would be interested in the content that you will get from different areas.
And should that be an area we should look at exploring into, particularly subscription? Because if you look at the New York Times, a good part of their revenue currently comes from subscription. And that means that their quality of news has to be at a certain level for anybody to be willing to buy, for anybody to be willing to subscribe to that.
Yeah, but you see, you're dealing with the people who probably ascribe that if it's not free, then I'm not getting it. I'm not going for it. Yeah, because when very many years ago, before Twitter and before Facebook, Pulse, the standard publication, tried to put a firewall on their online the e-paper. There were no takers. There were no takers. People did not. So,
Yeah.
I mean, but at the same time...
But I think...
Before we blame them for not taking, what was the reason for not taking? Because it might be that whatever was there was not something they felt was worth paying for.
But you see, because people are accustomed to buying the paper and getting the magazine for free. You see, so I mean, there are very many factors that actually make people not subscribe. Because even the Kenyans I know, sometimes I send people a link for New York Times, and they tell me like, give us your subscription because my 5 free whatevers are finished.
They're over.
They're over.
No, but what we can say, the trend of subscription is catching up. For example, with Netflix, with Showmax, it's catching up.
And for me,
some of us pay
my argument might be depends on what you're churning out.
I think it's also
it
priorities.
depends on what you're churning out. Hang on, let me finish. I think it depends on what you're churning out, because, as you say, if Netflix people are paying for it, it's because they feel there is value. And before we even conclude and think that this is something that is new, you remember Reader's Digest. That was a subscription that people paid for, and you waited for it. You didn't even have to get it immediately. It was a monthly subscription, but Kenyans, the same Kenyans who we're saying do not subscribe, subscribed for it.
And
so there must have been quality in the content.
Kenya subscribed for it and it died.
It's not only Kenyans.
It's not only in Kenya where it died.
Reader's Digest.
Anyway.
But the challenge would be, is the media prepared for that? I would like to to churn out as much content, for people to be able to wait for it. I remember on MultiChoice when they were doing East Africa, is it the channel on East African content or Kenyan
Magic East or something?
Yes, they had to put, I think, about 100 million aside to have people produce the content, then set up the channel. So even if you're talking about subscription, is the media willing, or is it able to put aside a certain amount of money to be able to have the content ready-made for the audiences to subscribe to? I can see the attempt with Viusasa, and I'm one of those who's never watched Viusasa, but I'm thinking like that would be the model to go by, but you'd still need to invest in the content beforehand.
Okay, but like we said, it's a business. So if it makes business sense, then I guess an investor would look at it and consider. But then it also brings in the question of media owners, because that's the other challenge that we may have that maybe is unique to Kenya in terms of majority of the private media, because we have what I'd call private and state media. And state media, we know, is there really for the benefit of
the state,
government, and it's there to promulgate that. But the private media that we have is also owned majorly by people with also political interest. So does that also play into what we churn out? Because at the end of the day, they also have an interest.
I think this idea of saying like, political people have political interest and all that, you cannot stop them from running a business. It's a business and actually, most countries, the media actually plays a very big role in politics. And if you take just like probably the US, this Murdoch. Murdoch he's actually managed to be that successful because of playing politics. That's why you can tell that Fox is pro Republicans, and these other ones, they call them the liberal media. So it plays a role. And if you read the biography of their stories, you see how actually they played a lot or worked a lot with politicians in power at that particular moment to get their way. You see, so I don't think there's anything wrong with a politician owning a media house, as long as the journalists there actually are objective enough. I mean,
and the question is not, there's no problem with them owning. The question is, does it also influence what comes
Now, that
out?
is what I'm talking about. The influence now is what I'm talking about. But some of them, I grew up in India. I keep on saying that because I went to school in India. I grew up in India, and there was a time like, if a businessman had so much money and he wanted to enter politics, the best thing he would do was to start a newspaper. You see, then it uses that to influence either voters or to influence opinion and all that. So I don't think there's anything wrong. It only becomes a problem when you actually deviate from journalistic ethos and start pushing the agenda
Of
no matter how
individuals.
divisive
Yeah.
of the individual, of the owner. I think that could be the only problem.
I'd like
and
to-
that's maybe that's probably what people allude to that. That's a problem that we have.
Remember that politician is still a businessman. He's not exactly just using it for political purposes, because
It has to make profit.
yeah, basically with the hard news, they would probably influence a lot in terms of what direction that would go. But remember, the profession is ours, and our profession basically is driven by editorial freedom. It's driven by the ethos he's saying and the practice per se. So decisions about how do we change the model of business should more or less come from the journalists and the editors themselves, because it is just like in any other industry, it's about innovation, it's about disruption. So we need to think about how do we disrupt what we have today, so that it is profitable tomorrow, and still practice what we need to practice.
All right.
So that we are not really, depending on, remember, advertising is also influenced by the economy. If it doesn't come your way, or there are other factors that influence, then you have a challenge.
You have a challenge.
I see now betting, which many media houses have been into, might have a challenge. So you have to think about how to mutate what you have.
All right, and maybe as we conclude, just a few comments that are coming through, and I'll give you an opportunity to respond to some of them, if you may. Sir Paul says, CNN audience, well, it's a question. CNN audience that voted for Trump, and a BBC audience that is going round in circles with Brexit, I guess questioning maybe the intelligence, I don't know. We have Eliud Mwangi who says, no, not at all. I think he's answering the question whether we are keeping to the agenda. For example, why don't we have space journalists? We launched a satellite some time back. I think it's ripe setting other agendas. Kenya needs to take space of what is happening as far as space discovery is concerned, technology, and many other things, not just politics. David Nakome says, seriously, that's how your editorial team thinks, feeding us garbage. I'm not sure what he means by feeding them garbage. I'll read one more. Eliud Mwangi, audience have changed in 5 years ago. Media convergency is happening. For example, Kenyans are tired with waking up and all we talk about is politics. Agenda setting means giving audience what they need and not what they want. What happened to serious follow-ups? All right, there's more comments coming in, but maybe, I don't know, I'll give you a chance to respond to some of those comments, if you may. I'll start with you, Clay, as we conclude.
I think this, the thing is, we do these follow-ups, and it's true, the audience, I mean, they've changed over the past 5 years. But you see, this thought or this notion that in the newsroom, we just sit and actually think like we are thinking 20 years ago, it's wrong, because we actually move with the times also. I mean, we don't live in the newsroom, we don't live in a bubble. We meet people out there and we do research. All media houses conduct research, and that's why media houses, I mean, after 2 or 3 years, you find that they're changing either their content, they're rebranding, because they need to keep up with the changing times of with the needs of the readers. Then this idea of, okay, fine, I don't know that one of space, because I'm yet to know a media house in the world that ever sent an astronaut to space. Yes, or reported from space. Yes, I mean, CNN did an interview from space. They did, Christian Amanpour interviewed those people in the International Space Center. And it took months and months and months of preparation, because they have to find out at what point these people will have the link with the Earth for her to conduct the interview. She never went to space, you know. So sometimes, you see, that's why sometimes I doubt the intention, I don't want to use this word, the intention of our audiences when actually they mention that things they should be doing, the things
That
the
we
kind
should
of
be
things that we
cocky.
should
Any
be
response
doing.
you'd like to
I
give
think
to
it's probably just a misunderstanding of what journalism is all
Koki
about.
is using very nice words. I think I
She's
lack
using
words. Yes, I lack the words.
No,
I
I'm
mean,
just, it's in all
actually,
honesty.
you're using the right words.
People don't understand, how journalism works, and again, it's not for them to understand. There's a lot of waking up at 4 a.m., for example. You know, there's a lot of camera work. There's a lot of movement. The studio is not just the set.
Right.
You know, the division of labor also can be challenging. There are no... yes, you can train journalists to be specialized in... I don't understand the element of, you know, like a space journalist. I don't think there's such a thing yet, but you can train them in aspects of space technology,
right.
and then depending on their interests, they can pursue that particular area. And also it depends on whether they are assigned those roles or not. So at the end of the day, I think we must be cognizant and appreciate that the audiences have really changed in terms of how they what we call users and gratification, how they seek information, their information-seeking habits, and how they respond to the information. Now there is the element of quick, like we've already got response to what we are saying.
Right.
But before that, you know, there was no such response.
For a fax machine.
Right. And then the other thing is the idea that, you know, there are no follow-ups. Yes, they might not seem so because they're not as frequent. But like we've just seen the guy, Tobias, you know, telling us about different aspects of what's going on with the immediacy of the issue.
Right.
But we are not saying that the media shouldn't really refocus itself to give the audience what they need according to what they say.
According to what they've said. All right, I want us to conclude and finish. I'll finish with a question to both of you, the same question. Clay, are you satisfied with where we are? And if not, what needs to change? What do you see as the small, low-lying fruits that we can pick up to just improve?
I think, okay, fine, there's a lot of room for improvement. And I say that because I realize we in the media houses or in the media, we actually know our shortcomings, we know our problems. No, people should not tend to think that we don't know them. We know them, and we know the kind of problems we have, that actually even in our own meetings, we talk about them, and we know our shortcomings. So all these things that we are working towards addressing them. We keep on doing that almost every week. We are getting there. But you see, as we keep on moving, but the target also keeps on moving. So we are actually running after a target. But it's not that we just sit back and we are doing what we can. And I think more training, probably, more training would help. Especially this younger journalist. And because the kind of people who come into the newsroom or the kind of stories that we get, and that's why I keep on saying that I kill stories, not dreams. I kill stories. If the story is not good enough, the biggest problem we have is actually, before we get into technological, all these other things, is that we have a shortage of, our vocabulary is limited. So the kind of stories that come in, this is a English language newspaper. The kind of stories that we get and all that, first of all, what you have to start dealing with is a language.
Is the language.
Yes.
All right. Koki, your closing remarks. And,
I think just like any media house all over the world, the challenge is how to mutate, to change the business. And as you are changing the business, you're still, you know, performing your duties. I think that would be where the crux of the matter is. The interrogation of how to slide from one business model or what to adopt is really a challenge. And I also think it's also a very expensive endeavor, just like we would say with the migration from digital, from analog to digital. I think there's that element of a bit of hesitation to understand where to go, and again, the element of resources to move forward. But I think every time I see media houses like KTN, Nation, you know, coming up with the, you know, adaptations of what they think would bring value to this space. And to this day, I hear there are like 85 TV stations, 200 and something radio stations. So I don't think we are in so much of a crisis. It's just that movement.
It's the transition. Thank you very much. We'll have to wind up that right there because of time. Thank you very much, Koki Ochieng, who's a lecturer, media and communication at USIU, and Clay Muganda, who is an editor with the Standard Group. Thank you so very much for joining us. And also, keep your comments coming online. We'll continue the discussion online as it seems to have elicited a lot of reaction with some viewers feeling that we are on the right path, others feeling that no, we are not and have never been. But like Clay says, is it possible that if we were Githeri Media, we are feeding Githeri audience? I leave that for you out there to judge, but that's clear, not me, but it's very harsh. But we're going to take a break, and do stay with us. We still have your health lined up for you here and more news and reviews. We take that break, we'll be right back.